Hello and welcome to another episode of AdventuresIn.net. I'm Sean Clayville, your host, and with me today, co-hosts Christian Wins.
Hello.
Hey, Christian. And
Hi,
we got
Sean.
Adam F.
Hello.
from Vermont.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And back for another week and probably some more, Mark Miller.
I made it back. I'm a co-host, kids.
Glad to have you here, Mark. Every week. We just look forward to it.
Me too, man. I don't leave when you guys stop the show. I stay here and I just look in the camera, wait for the next week to come up. That's what I'm doing.
Okay. Don't you got like family or anything like that?
Yeah.
We're your family.
You're my family, Sean.
All right. Let's bring on our guest. Let's welcome Andrei Schiller-Chan. Welcome, Andrei.
G'day, fams. Sorry, Mark, you just went from 0 to 100 there, mate. I'm not trying to burst into laughter here, mate. It's great. No, whatever you've just eaten, man, send it over my way. Oh my God. Let's keep it going then.
Yeah. All right, Andrei.
I'm working on my professional speaking voice. I don't know. Maybe later we can talk about some tips if you guys want any.
Yeah, 100%. That would be great, man.
All right, Andrei. Why don't you start us off by just kind of give us a quick introduction of yourself and how you got into development, how you got into .NET.
Well, geez, how long do you have? But to try and wrap this up as quickly as I can, I was a theatre director back in the day, long time back in Melbourne, and I came over to London because I got offered a place to do a master's in voice sciences, voice studies. And the reason I got into voice was because I started working with wrongfully convicted prisoners. So there's a fella called Reuben Hurricane Carter. I'm not sure if you know about him, but he's quite big in America. Well, he passed away some years ago. Bob Dylan wrote a song about him. It's called The Hurricane. Do you guys know the song? Cool. So with Reuben, we were working with a wrongfully convicted fella called Dave McCallum, and he was exonerated in 2015, I believe. And during my friendship with him and during my time with him, I started learning a little about how trauma informs voice, and I started using a lot of the learnings that I suppose learned there and took it into the theatre world. And then I started directing and using some of the techniques that I learned. And then, long story short, I got offered a place to study at the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama here in the UK. Now, after that master's had finished, I didn't get any good internships, so it was very difficult for me to find a job. And about 3 months went by where I literally couldn't find anything. And how I was keeping afloat was by teaching boxing. And I'd really gotten to the point where I was so down in the dumps and really depressed, and I was in a very bad headspace that I suppose I reached out to one of my boxing clients, and I asked him, "Do you have any jobs going?" And he said, "Well, we've got a temporary contract where we just need a person to staple some paper together." And I suppose I had to swallow my pride a little bit and just say yes, because I had no other choice. I had to pay the bills. And so I was stapling pieces of paper together for 3 months. And this is given the fact that I had my own theatre business in Melbourne and in Victoria and Australia. So it was a bit of a jump for me, but I did that job damn well and I got promoted. And the company that I was working with, Moneybox, has been fantastic. And I really worked at it, worked really hard. And they gave me the opportunity to build out their pensions operations, I suppose, requirements. I kept learning SQL there, and I kept building up the requirements that were needed for that. And then eventually, the company gave me the opportunity to do a lateral move into software engineering because of my domain knowledge. I seem to have, I suppose, I proved my worth, and they gave me the chance to move into software engineering. And I suppose it's because somebody caught wind that I had been learning to code on the side. I wanted to learn how to do what the engineers were doing, and so I was teaching myself. And then I had a great mentor really kind of pick me up and give me a chance, and now here I am. So I kind of owe everything to some of the people at Moneybox and to my mentor, Mr. Christopher Haynes.
Yeah, he's probably looking at those staples and he's like, these are some of the best stapling I've ever seen.
Oh my God, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I stapled the crap out of those papers.
These are amazing. We got to get this guy into programming.
That's exactly what happened, and boy, are they happy about it now, given the fact I'm saving them tons of money on PDF creation, which is what we'll get into shortly, I presume.
Yeah. So what kind of things do you tend to work on with .NET?
So one of the first jobs that they gave me when I was a junior developer was actually generating statements. So Moneybox is a fintech, and here in the UK, everything is very tightly regulated. So you need just statements are coming out left, right, and center. So we needed a way to generate these statements quickly and actually to have a little bit of flexibility with how we can, I suppose, provide the information to customers in a nice and exciting way. And we were using HTML PDF creation at the beginning. So my job right at the beginning as a junior software engineer was writing things in HTML and converting them into PDF. Now, I'm not sure if you guys have ever done it, but when I was in my jiu-jitsu class, I said, has anyone done HTML to PDF? It's a collective groan, just echoes throughout the chamber there. So it seems to be a rite of passage for a lot of folks. But God, I was finding it super, super frustrating. Have you guys ever had to do any of that HTML to PDF stuff in the past? I'm sure you must have.
Yeah, I've not done HTML to PDF, but I've definitely had to go out there and find libraries that would help me out with it.
I did lots of that.
A number of them, yeah, but I've never
PHP.
really found them. Yeah, yeah, that were really that user friendly to get things done quickly and easily.
Yeah, it really wasn't like that. I mean, Christian, you might have come across this before, but like HTML's got no concept of pagination, right? So what we found really difficult, especially when you're working with finance, you always have tables, and then you would have, you might have 5 sentences within the table. So you could set up a table break, a page break easily enough in HTML. But what happens if you've got characters within a table, which then spills over into the next page? So you get all this kind of funky stuff that happens. So we had to do all kinds of crazy algorithms, like measuring the width of a character and then measuring the number of characters you could fit inside a table cell, all kinds of crazy stuff. I was about to ready to throw the cat out of the window after about 2 weeks of this. So that's what I started. I said, to hell with this. I'm not going to use HTML or PDF. Let's see if I can find somewhere or something better to use. And this is when I stumbled upon Quest PDF. And as I was just mentioning before, it wasn't on the first page of Google yet. It was on the third page. You never usually click next on Google.
There's more than one page. I wasn't aware.
Oh yeah, Christian, there's tons. Yeah, you just got to go looking, mate. Tons and tons of pages. Yeah, it's unbelievable. I've never found anything past the first page of Google, but I think I went through everything on the first page because there's tons of like PDF creation libraries out there, aren't there? There's we were using Aspos. I don't want to get sued for defamation about using that library, so I'm not going to say anymore. But the reason why we moved from Aspos to Quest PDF is because of the pain points that we were having. So I think I went through all kinds of different libraries on there, and they just couldn't give us what we wanted. And really, what sealed the deal was that we needed to create a PDF that could create charts, bar charts and pie charts, all kinds of charts. Nothing else was really giving us what we wanted. And then, yeah, as I said, I clicked onto page 3 of Google and found Quest PDF. And it's an open source library that is sincerely intuitive, even for a junior software engineer like myself at the time, to use. And now we've rolled it out across the company, and it works brilliantly. It's very easy to use, and performance-wise, I think it would take a week to generate customer statements using Aspos PDF. We've halved that time with Quest. I haven't done any in-depth analysis of the performance, but just given the fact that it's literally cut our time in half to generate customer statements is proof enough. It's fantastic.
So do you think that performance may be perceived or actual better performance, does that come from, I don't know, better algorithm, more limited feature set, different approach on how to generate PDF? Because I mean, PDF generation sounds like really hard for me, also from my experience, because, and do correct me if I'm wrong, The nice thing about HTML, of course, is as you mentioned, that the browsers lay out stuff like tables automatically, and page breaks. Well, they send it to the printer, and eventually there will be a page break. Whereas in PDF, you basically can't say, okay, here's some long text, good luck, but instead, okay, add new page, put that content on the page, add another page, put that content on that page, and if the content doesn't fit, it just gets cut. Right?
Yeah, that's right.
So does that come into play here, or what would you say? What was
No,
what's the performance miracle here?
to be honest, mate, I wouldn't be able to tell you that. You'd have to bring on the genius himself, Martin Zierbeck, the fellow who created it. He wears a helmet in his pictures on GitHub. I presume to protect his intellect at all times. But I mean, look, I suppose PDF, it's closed source stuff, and we're having so many problems. And when you go onto the forum and look at all the issues they've got and everything that we were facing, yeah, I couldn't tell you what was going on there, mate, behind closed doors. But the great stuff with Quest PDF is that it's open source and you can look through it yourself. I mean, personally, I haven't really gone through every single file. I've really only looked at what we needed. But when it comes to page breaks, it's a simple. All he's done is implemented a simple fluid method onto it. You say when you want a page break, bang, in it goes. You don't have to do any of that algorithmic counting about how long characters are or the width of the tables. That's why I'm saying it's like super intuitive. Just use. If you want to get a PDF up and running in about 5 minutes, that's the way you go about doing it.
That sounds really nice, and I think especially given the different approach that PDF has, let me put it that way, than a word processor or something like a website, right? Where basically just provide text and then the layout is done by the system, not by you. I think having an intuitive API is probably paramount, right? So maybe that the library shines as well, right?
Yeah, I think so, and because he's using like a fluent syntax, the way you read your PDF is the way that the code is written. So it's kind of written line by line. It's encouraged that you break things into components, right? So for instance, this pie chart that I was talking about implementing for our statements, that's a whole separate component, and you might make another table, a different component. You would try and compartmentalize as much of it as possible. But the way you read it is exactly how you write it. It's very cool.
And what about international stuff? Let's say right to left text order or Japanese characters and other stuff that we typically don't think about, and then they fail even in PDF files.
Oh God, Jesus, I haven't even looked at that. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be able to tell you. I haven't been required to write fintech statements in a different language or go in the other direction.
Lucky. Recently, I was doing that for Norwegian, I think. Everything looked great, apart from some Norwegian characters that just couldn't render.
Yeah, I mean, hey, look, it does pie charts, and I'm sure it does other things, but no, I wouldn't be able to tell you, for sure. I haven't experimented enough to see.
I just threw a link into chat on a section from the documentation for Quest PDF called Content Direction, where they talk about using right to left. So it looks like they might have support for it. Yeah, in fact, it says content from left to right is a call you can make, followed by content from right to left. So you can set the content direction using that API.
Yeah,
comprehensive.
Adam, be nice about Norwegians. I'm 50% Norwegian. My mom was 100%. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other great thing about Quest PDF is that the documentation is off the charts. It is so good. It is so handy. I think that was a big thing as well. Like, I think I was looking at, was the other one Iron PDF? Maybe was the other one I was looking at, but I think what put me off at the time was just I found the documentation just to be a little bit too brittle, whereas what Martin has done is really incredible. I really sound like this guy's fanboy, don't I? But he's just, if you ever want a good case of imposter syndrome, go look up this guy and read what he's done with Quest PDF. He's a fantastic fellow who's done a great job. Yeah, so I wouldn't. Yeah, so it doesn't surprise me that it supports different characters and right to left functionality there.
So is
So
this like a one-man show? I mean, it does. There are several contributors, at least on the GitHub, for that project. But would you still say there's one benevolent dictator steering everything?
yeah, I think so. I just had a quick look to see, because I haven't really touched.
Yeah.
I haven't really had a quick look at it for a long time. I think we implemented his library in 2021, like a long time ago. So I was like, oh, keen to see what's going on. But it's 2 weeks ago. He's still going at it. I can see his latest commit was there. So yeah, definitely looks that way.
I mean, I was in the last episode, I was praising jQuery for having a very low number of open issues, and so Quest PDF as of today is at 134, which I think is kind of okay, because some of them are feature requests. I think implementing forms is of course something interesting, right? So you have PDFs with fields that you can fill out. But I think from technology point of view, that's just yet another level, right? And that's maybe where one of those two license products are more common, right? Or they just implemented. Talking about the license, I mean, what's the situation there? I mean,
yeah. So yeah,
the
geez. I mean, as I said, like way back in 2021, there wasn't even a. Again, I literally just saw this, just having a look now before we came on. That license thing didn't exist. It was just under the free MIT license when we used it. And I'm glad to see. I'm happy for him that he has actually started to put some licensing stuff on there. So it's split between three. I suppose 3 tiers. You know, you've got the free community use, and then you've got the professional, and then you might have the more elite one. So I mean, yeah, currently we're still on the, I think we're on like the 2022.5, where he says, if you're still an older user, you can still use this for free. But I mean, look, it's I think what does he say? He said that you can, if you earn more than 1 million USD and you're using a later version, you've got more than 10 software engineers, then please be honest and sign up for the more pricey tier.
So that's similar to the community editions of Visual Studio and Identity Server and other products. I mean, probably Identity Server is a good comparison, right? I fully understand that if you're doing let's say stuff that's especially relevant in a business context, then you have to have a model that's just viable. And the model can't be you just do it for free and then hope that some companies will send their gratitude. But it's the development has to be steady, and the system just needs to be sustainable, right? So I'm
glad he's doing that. Right, I mean, we gave him some sponsorship right at the beginning. But I'm glad he's able to do something. But again, like it's all based on honesty, isn't it? For him currently, he's not enforcing a validation on any license. So he's a legend.
Yeah, the pricing is at least as of today. There's a professional edition and enterprise edition, depending on the size of the companies. So I think professional is up to 10 devs, and then enterprise over 10 devs, and that's currently at $503,000 a year, plus taxes. And if I understand it correctly, no matter how many developers you have, for instance, the enterprise version is good for any size, right? So
yeah, I mean,
personally, that sounds reasonable to me, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's well worth it. I mean, I think at some point we were paying, I suppose, more than that, and they really weren't. Yeah, they were just causing more problems than giving us solutions. Again, hopefully I'm not going to get sued for defamation here.
Yeah, I don't think they're our sponsor, so.
Yeah, I was probably should have checked before I opened my mouth there.
Yeah, it does look like there's one, limitation, at least that I found, of Quest PDF, and it doesn't do forms, at least not yet. He might be able to add something like that in the future. I was looking through the GitHub repository of of feedback, and I guess people have kind of asked a little bit about that, but it's not there yet. So right now, it's pretty much just creating layouts for PDFs.
Yeah, yeah, that seems to be it at the moment.
All
So
right.
what was it, really like, working at this, this library, compared to, other ones that you've tried out?
So, yeah, interesting. If I take my mind back to 2021, it was about over a 3 week period where, um, where my tech lead gave me, I suppose, free rein to say, look, if you think you can find something better than HTML to PDF conversion, I suppose go for gold. So I tested out. I tried to give it at least like enough libraries, enough time to see which one would work for what we needed. Um, yeah, and none of them. I didn't get past a few of them for like 2 days, and I was just going, nah, that's just not working for us. What really sealed the deal for me when I was working with the Quest PDF was the documentation, was the ability to actually to write it up in the way that you would read a PDF. So it actually made the readability a lot more cleaner for everyone else to understand as well. I think that's a big thing when you're working with PDFs, because it's you tend to share a lot of the work. There's not really one single, I suppose, source of failure when it comes to PDF generation in a company, because especially when you're working in finance, you've got a lot of different teams that have to touch different parts of regulatory finance, and each statement always has some kind of reason to exist. So I'm not sure if any of you guys have worked in a regulatory environment before, but it's super, especially here in the UK. You need to be on top of these statements, and there's statements for everything. So readability was very important. But really, the thing that sealed the deal for me was actually this great method that he developed. And Christian, we touched on this a little bit before. And you can go into the documentation, you can find it now. It's literally the method is called ensure space. That's it. And the method it's a one-line method, and it literally does everything that we just talked about, which is how do you know when to split a table cell if it goes over to the next page? Do you have to count how many characters you can fit in the table cell? How wide are they going to be? That's what we have to do in HTML PDF, where you do some other crazy stuff. Here, all you have to do is type in ensure space, and for us, that was really what sealed the deal, because it is just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and thousands of tables with different transactional data, and they're all different, and we needed to make sure that it's split into or split into the next page properly. Otherwise, it would just look all completely jumbled. It just wouldn't work. And that's a problem. It becomes like a legal problem if you can't give these statements to people properly.
Yeah, I think there's another kind of component to the architecture of Quest PDF that I really like, which based on the sample code I've seen, which is readability. Like you say, you're looking at the code in the same order, in the same presentation that the PDF appears in. And there's a number of kind of interesting choices in terms of architecture where you basically are calling dot in some method, and the method is making a change but also returning the changed item. So you just, on multiple lines, you might say, dot extend horizontal, dot height, 75, dot background colors, and you can do that, run that down the line like that, right? When you're modifying like a column or an item or things like that. And then also similarly for like, on an item, you can say, I think line, and then put the text that you want to have on that line. And I think you can do things like justify. You can say right justify or left justify, whatever. I don't recall what the keyword is, but the function name is, but you can make that call in there as you're, and I think you can set your font as well as you're going down. So line by line, you can see it, and it's in all the code samples I've seen on Quest PDF, as well as in your article, Andrei. I'm looking at it, I'm nodding my head as I'm reading it because it's easy to grok.
Yeah, that's what I mean. The readability, the ease and the speed at which you can pick it up.
Yeah, it's nice.
I mean that's a huge thing. I mean, I remember picking up a Suppose PDF. Somebody just dumped it on me because they've been working with it for like 5 years, I think, maybe since the company began. And God, that took just ages to understand, ages and ages. Whereas Quest PDF, it's literally just a fluid syntax. You can just build one on top of the other. And the great thing is that you can set a styling as well, and you literally just pass that down the line and activate it when you want. So yes, that's what really sealed the deal for Quest PDF. But actually, I am thinking back now. The real reason was that the product designer wanted. This is actually a funny story. The product designer wanted a pie chart to list the number of assets that a customer may have, and so she built this beautiful pie chart, and no other PDF library supported charts of any kind. And so when I was experimenting with Quest PDF and started doing the chart, I was like, oh, this is actually working. This is working greatly. And everyone was so excited because we had this statement that could produce this chart for everyone. And then I kind of sat back and said, well, hang on, how many assets can a customer have? And then at the time we could only have like 4, but then we were planning to roll out a lot more. And so that pie chart had to go in the bin because you could imagine a person with like 30 assets and a pie chart all being taken up by different, you've got Apple and Meta and Facebook and all this stuff. And if you have 30 of them, it would just be a complete jumble. So at the end of the day, we had to get rid of the pie chart, but it led us to the topic that we're talking about now. So yeah, funny to think about in hindsight.
So Andrei, when I was reading your original article, I proceeded to click on your name and look at some of the other articles you wrote, which then led me into an article you wrote called "How to Give Your Voice Depth and Why It Matters." And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to be able to, pick up my wife on a date, make her want to go out on a date with me by having a sexy voice. And so I just was reading that and I was like, this is awesome.
Wait, hang on. She's your wife, but you haven't been on a date yet?
I have to work all the time. I got to work. I got to work to get what I want. That's what I gotta do.
Okay,
so anyway, I'm trying some of the techniques, right? I'm like,
yeah.
Hey there. Hey. Then she walks away right around that by the 3rd or 4th hey. But
I start understanding that. So Andrei, please give us the secrets. Actually, may I go one step back? Actually, so when you mentioned your studies, could you elaborate what that actually means? I've heard the term, but I have no idea what you're.
Okay, all right. So so I suppose it splits into 2 kinds, right? You've got a speech and language therapist, and they'll deal with people more with stutters and more speech disorder stuff, and then you'll have people like me who are more dealing, I suppose, with more personal requests, a little bit like what you, Mark. Like, can you help me make my voice deeper so my wife will go on a date with me? Although I feel if that's your problem, you may want to go see a counselor because that doesn't sound too good.
That's the tip of the iceberg.
I was going to say it's the tip of the iceberg, right? But the best way that I can sum it up is the King's Speech. Like, I'm not sure if you guys have seen the film with Geoffrey Rush and Colin Firth, but that's basically what a voice coach does in a nutshell. But in my master's, I was focusing more on the trauma aspect, about how trauma can affect the voice and how we could help people coming out of prisons. Because a lot of people go in there when they're very young. They may have been picked up for like marijuana. There's really just silly crimes and things like that. But they come out obviously changed, and their voice. I mean, think about how much you use your voice in a day. You speak a lot, and your vocal folds. Typically, an average man, they vibrate 120 times per second. So we use our voice a lot, but then our voice also influences people around us, and they influence how they feel about us. And your voice can also influence how you feel on the inside. And so maybe I think, Mark, that article that I wrote was talking a little bit more about how the voice influences us internally, and also how it can influence us on the outside. So my job as a voice coach is to kind of help people take more of a control about how they use their voice in a much more what's the right word here? But I suppose to start treating it as more like an instrument, and rather than just to be something to be controlled by. So for instance, if you're nervous, you might just feel like my voice is going to break here, it's going to go high. I don't really feel like I've got any control over it. And most people don't even like the sound of their own voice. They hate it. And actually, a fair number of my clients here in the London are software engineers, funnily enough, and they don't know I'm a software engineer because I don't think it's on my blog anywhere. But they come to me and say, I don't feel like I've got the right to speak in meetings. I'm like, well, and then we'll go into the feeling about why they don't feel like they've got the right to speak. The other one that came up was, I feel afraid that I'm going to be interrupted, and that brought up a very interesting conversation, because I suppose we're missing out and hearing a lot of quieter voices if we're not generating an environment where people feel like they have the right to be heard. So all these things that came out, I was speaking to clients, has been quite interesting for the software engineering side. But back to your question, Mark, about how to make your voice deeper. It's not about lowering your voice, into a very low kind of thing. It's about activating what are called resonating chambers within your body. So, for instance, I can give you a very clear example about amplifying nasal resonance. I can just go straight up into a really Aussie accent, and now I'm amplifying the higher frequencies that are bouncing off the nasal chambers here in my face and my head. But it actually makes me louder without using any more effort. So if you ever go to a pub or if you ever go to a nightclub and you feel like you're using your voice and you want to be heard, start speaking in an Australian accent. Or if you're American, just try and go a little bit more nasal. It's called twang. It's like what Bob Dylan. It's an actual style of singing. Bob Dylan sings in twang. But you can save your voice from, I suppose, drying out and from it hurting because you're pressing so much, because you're activating what's called like a positive feedback loop. You're getting all those vibrations that are going up through your vocal tract. They hit some of the nasal chambers within your head, and those sine waves get sent back down, and it creates this positive feedback loop, so your voice gets louder without using as much effort. So,
Mark. Yeah, you just get up close to your wife, and you use your chest voice, and you go, "Hey, dear, would you go on a date with me?"
Okay, I thought he was saying use my nasal voice to get the date.
No. That's if you're in a bar. That's when you're in a bar, not when you're trying to be, sexy, smooth to your wife.
I gotta work on. There's so much I gotta work on.
Yeah,
I took some notes.
Andre, I heard one way for singers to learn how to use your chest voice rather than your nasal voice is actually lay down on the ground. Have you heard that?
Yes. Yeah, you can all do it now if you want. But basically, when you, Mark would do it.
There goes Mark.
Yeah, I mean, when you lie down, your diaphragm relaxes, so your diaphragm isn't fighting against gravity, so your body starts to relax. And so, Mark, I mean, that whole article is about a 15-minute read in itself, and I don't want to bore our listeners with going too much into detail. But when you're saying how do I have a lower voice, it's not about just, again, dropping your larynx and speaking a low voice. It's about allowing every resonating chamber within your body to start resonating more rather than locking yourself into a certain pitch. So, for instance, if I just lock myself into my chest, into a chest resonant voice by forcibly dropping my larynx, which makes my vocal frequency lower, I'm going to bore the crap out of you because I've denied my voice range. So you can't just. It's not about focusing on one aspect of your voice by, I just want to amplify my chest resonance to sound more like a man. It's about amplifying your chest. It's about amplifying the nasal resonances. It's amplifying the resonances in your head and in your throat, and bring them all together, not just using one part. I'm hoping I haven't lost you, but it is.
No, I actually, there's a lot about the article that I really liked. I loved, one of the things I study is the science of good design, and one of the components of that is how do we interpret our world, and I know a little bit about how we hear things, but there were elements in this article that I had not encountered before that I liked, like the ability to essentially detect if somebody is nervous or not, right? And what are we, how are we doing that? And then how do you then transmit or communicate that this is a safe environment, right? By essentially speaking in a relaxed way, right?
Yeah.
I thought it was, I was really impressed with the science behind it. I was like, wow, look at this. A lot of research here.
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's a bit of a rabbit hole. You can keep going into it, and you'll still learn new things. But yeah, I mean, Sean, it's exactly what you said. Like you can get like a deep voice by just lying on the ground. Like what's happening there? And it's literally because your body is just relaxing more. And the more relaxed your body is, um, the more your rib cage can move, the more your larynx can move, and you have more greater movement in the frequencies that you can uh, phonate, that you can literally speak and people can understand. So this thing about relaxation and stress when it comes to the voice, it's an interesting tension. You can't be too tense, you can't be too relaxed. You want to find just a very happy medium. And so, as a voice coach, clients come to me. It's really about mastering this in the best way possible. And uh, and look, and here's the thing: like as software engineers, as all the four of you know, like you guys have a great responsibility because you guys are geniuses in your own right, and you all do talks um, to help the younger generation like myself learn. Um, but for other junior software engineers who are trying to get into your space, I say to them, well, you can use the daily stand up you do as a practice board. It's a great way to practice learning to improve your voice because the worst thing you can do is go into stand up and just have that. I don't know where it's come from. Like, 'cause this is very foreign to me, but maybe you guys can clarify. But it would usually go something like this. Yeah, hey guys, I'm just working on the Quest PDF generation for tomorrow, and then I'll try and get it into release into the test environment on Friday. See about going release on Monday. Does that sound familiar? It's just a complete monotone. Doesn't really go anywhere. It just.
That's exactly the point of stand-up, right? We want to keep it short, so it must be as boring as possible.
That's fine. But I argue that you can still keep it short, concise, and to the point, but also keep the attention of your listeners because a monotone just switches people off. And it doesn't make them feel like in a comfortable and relaxed state. You would never go to a theater show, you would never see a film, and I suppose the whole show is just actors speaking in monotone. You'd just be sitting there bored out of your mind. And I think it's important, especially if you're giving updates in the fintech world, that you want your audience to understand what's going on. And so your job as a master speaker is to reel them in.
Yeah, one question in this area. Like, I'm a public speaker for many years now, and I noticed, like, I come from Poland, so my mother tongue is Polish, right? And I noticed that whenever I do speak English, I have higher pitch. Do you know what could be the reason? And is it common, or is it just me?
It's very common. It's the placement of your tongue. It's the placement of your jaw when you're starting to when you're learning the language. I mean, if you learn English and you hear English speakers, English are naturally head heavy. It's coming from the head. If you think about received pronunciation, it's all right at the front of the mouth. It doesn't sound very much like how you guys speak. More in the States, which is a little bit more throaty, and a little bit more deeper in the chest. But all accents have different places where they naturally sit when it comes to the placement of where the vowels are. And so when you're speaking English, your tongue is going to be doing something a little bit differently to how you speak it in the mother tongue, and that forces the way the air comes up through your vocal tract and starts bouncing around in your mouth cavity there. So it's really just about the placement.
That's super fascinating. Thank you for sharing that. Could being nervous also be a contributing factor? A friend of mine a few years ago, she was looking for a new job, and then she was kind of phoning with a potential new employer. And I happened to be in the room, and I noticed that while she was on the phone, she was talking in a higher voice as usual, right? And that was not like her phone voice, because I happen to know her phone voice, but it was her phoning potential new employer voice. So maybe that also, and I mean, if you don't speak in your mother tongue, maybe that kind of builds in, so maybe more adrenaline. I don't know. Could
Yeah,
that be as well?
yeah. I mean, 100%. I can't speak on your behalf, Adam or Christian, because I don't speak a second language. So I have so much respect for you guys getting up there and doing that in a language that's not your mother tongue.
Or you do American English, Australian English. I mean,
Yeah. Well, maybe Australian, maybe a bit of English here and there, but so if your voice starts going higher, it is because stress starts forcing your body into the fight or flight response, and the fight or flight response says, It does all kind. It could be doing a myriad of different things, but the number one thing is that it prepares your body for action. Now, as I said, Sean, going back to your analogy about lying on the floor and your body relaxing, and why does that make your voice deeper? Because it's making space. It's allowing for space to happen. What happens when you want to fight or flight? Things start to tense up. So, for instance, if you're quite nervous, you might start breathing a little bit quicker. But the problem is when you're nervous, you tend to lock your stomach because it's like you're in a protective pose, right? So if you're nervous, all four of you can just do this now. Like, is your belly nice and, I mean, you all look pretty relaxed. So I would imagine it would be nice and your belly would be nice and relaxed. But when you're nervous, your abdomen starts to tighten up. So then your body goes, well, I need air. And my diaphragm has no place to move because my organs below my diaphragm aren't moving. So my body is going to have to find some way to intake air. And so what it does is it activates these things called secondary respiratory muscles. It's a big sternocleidomastoid. You can see it, or the listeners at home can't see it, but there's a big muscle that runs down the mastoid process just under your chin, and it attaches to what's called your scapula here, and it starts lifting your rib cage up and down so you guys can start breathing in air when you're nervous. Problem with that is that this muscle is so big it starts to tighten up the larynx, so your vocal tract, the place that houses your vocal folds, things start to get very tight. And what happens to a tight guitar string? The frequency starts to get higher. So that's why the voice starts rising in pitch when you get nervous, because things start to get a lot tighter, like a guitar string. So you have to start learning techniques and start trying to understand how to relax your body in that state when you're in a nervous situation. And you can use all these different kind of techniques to kind of just start grounding yourself a little bit more. But it's hilarious. Now you might find like a 6-foot fella, he's really muscular, full of macho man, and then a police cop pulls him up on the side of the road. Oh, hello, officer. Oh, what did I do wrong today? Like it's hilarious. It's hilarious what the voice will give away about how somebody is feeling.
That's how I talk normally all the time.
You're just constantly nervous of your wife, mate. I don't blame her because you haven't taken her out on a date for a long time, apparently.
I hope she says yes.
Yeah.
Of course, anymore, you could just use AI to give yourself like a Luther Vandross voice and,
Yeah, that's scary.
Send a little, voicemail to your wife, with what Luther Vandross is speaking.
I feel like this show's turning into, will Mark get a date with his wife?
Yeah, I'd be keen to hear. Oh man, yeah. It sounds like you got to take her out, fella.
We'll keep you updated, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, tune in next week to find out Mark's wife's answer.
Yeah. And look, just something very easily that I could tell you, Mark. If you're nervous, the best way to start unnerving yourself is to introduce range and melody back into your voice. So instead of, going into monotone and allowing that nerves just to kind of keep your voice at a certain pitch, if you can start bringing melody and song into the way you speak, it starts to trigger what's called the parasympathetic nervous system within you. It starts to relax you a little bit more. And that way, you might just be able to grab, pull her onto your side, mate.
We'll start maybe with some karaoke then.
That's not a bad shout. Actually, I wouldn't go that far. I think, Mark, I really have to bring you back. Man, you got to find a happy balance. You go 0 to 100 too much.
Okay, I need your phone number, Andre, so I could have you on the speakerphone while I'm working on these things.
I mean, I do that. I have clients where I'll have them recording their sessions where they're speaking at a legal office and stuff. So, man, I'm happy to be there backup for you, Mark.
That's so funny. That's so funny. Thank you.
We're all good. Yep. We'll move on to picks. Let's have Mark. Why don't you go first this week?
Okay, my pick is a show on Disney called Andor. It's like two of my favorite Boolean operations combined together into one name. And this thing kind of surprised me because I had gone in. What? Nerd alert. That's what my wife says when I come up to ask her for a date. I don't even get the words out. She's like, nerd alert. So, but anyway, Andor totally surprised me. My first, stop at Disney with the Star Wars series was, I think, Obi-Wan, and I really didn't like, the initial episodes. I talked to somebody who thought it was really good, so I went back in again, and I just have problems with the writing, I have problems with the directing. There are problems all over with Obi-Wan, but with Andor, that experience, it was totally the opposite of that. Instead of having problems, I was impressed. In fact, it had, I think, my two favorite villains of any TV series I've ever seen, and those two villains were not working together. They were kind of each fighting for their own, what they wanted. And I found it incredibly delightful. This villain just kept getting, the villain was on the normal path of the protagonist, right? Where the protagonist has all the obstacles in front, but now this was happening to the villain, and I was loving it. It was so delightful. So anyway, I recommend that. I think there's only one season of it, but I really enjoyed it. If you're a fan of the Star Wars universe, I feel like they nailed the feeling, the setting. The props were excellent as well, right? You have these props you haven't seen before that feel authentic and real, and as if they're right there in the universe. Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
If I may jump in, they are currently shooting season 2.
Woohoo!
Have you watched Boba Fett?
No, I don't think I have.
Oh, you have to watch Boba Fett. That's
Okay.
Another good one. Yeah.
All right, we'll get into that next.
Okay. All right, Christian, what's your pick this week?
I have a technical tip this week, and it's PNPM. So as you probably know, when working with NPM packages, you could also use Yarn if you wanted as the package manager of choice. And they're mostly compatible. And there are also some projects where one works better than the other. And I recently found out about PNPM. And what I like about PNPM is that it's pretty fast. So on their website, they claim it's up to twice as fast than others, without naming the others, of course. And one of the things they do, and I kind of really like that, is they are using hard links for the dependencies they're installing with npm. So I probably know that if you use a framework X and that has a lot of npm packages, and you do a lot of projects with framework X, then each of those projects, you basically have the same node modules folder with the same contents, bar any version changes, of course, right? And what PNPM does is it's using hard links. So if you're using version 1.2.3 of a dependency, it's on your hard drive once. And it even works under Windows, even though symlinks there are, well, let's just say a different story, but I managed to pull it off. And as usual, there might be some dependencies that are not compatible or compliant with npm yet, but that also is being worked on. And so I find this really interesting and, yeah, pretty fast and slick alternative. And that's my pick of this week.
All right. One thing that's always bothered me with npm is, why do I need to download the entire source code, distributable, and everything with it? Why can't I just say, only give me the distributable? Because, I'm not really needing to go in and look at their source code, locally on my machine when I install something. So it would be much, much smaller if I could just say, just give me what I need to be able to build my application. I don't need everything else to go with it. If I needed that, I could go out and look on it at GitHub or wherever it's at. So that's my little rant there. All right, Adam, what's your pick?
So my pick for this week is a little bit different because it's a case of Big Out, call it. I was looking how to host Mac M1 online as basically a dedicated virtual machine. And I checked dozens of those services that they claim they do it. And most of them do some weird hacks. They provide Hackintosh, Docker doesn't work, etc., etc. I finally landed with cyberlink.net, This worked for me really good. M1 is like dedicated, Docker works, everything is cool. So not to obviously recommend any specific provider, but just keep in mind that there are providers out there that can give you like a proper Mac M1 as a dedicated server. The only thing that I don't like, but it applies to all the Mac instances, is like VNC is slow as hell. But SSH works great. That's it.
Okay, so my pick this week is some software that I came upon for web cameras. And what it allows you to do is, say you don't have a webcam, you can actually use your phone as your webcam. So that's one of the things that it does. But it also allows you to have greater control over lots of different things for your camera if you have an actual webcam. So you can adjust lots of different sliders for color, background effects, lots of different things. And the software is called Camo. So basically just lets you take your camera and produce, better video, whether it's a meeting or streaming or recording or anything like that. And there's a free version. And then it's basically, if you want to pay more, you'll get more features and those couple different levels of payment there. So depending on what your needs are, but if you're looking for something that gives you some better control over your camera, or if you want to use your phone as your webcam, check out Camo. And they didn't pay me for that. All right, Andrei, you got a pick for us?
Yeah, I was having to think about this. Our boss held a book club for our team, and the book that we were reading is called Turn the Ship Around. I've forgotten the author. You have to Google that one, but it's about leadership. It's about if you really want to expand the potential of the people that you look after and that you lead, it's about letting go and entrusting them with more responsibility. So he was actually a Navy captain looking after a nuclear submarine, and before that it was always, I lead, you follow. He came in, literally turned the ship around by changing the management paradigms and said, you lead, I lead. So it's about leading to lead. So yeah, fantastic book that really changed the way that we think about how we mentor juniors, and I suppose even how we kind of look at ourselves when we're managers and leaders. So I can't recommend the book enough. It is an invigorating read and really makes you think. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it looks like it's Andy Wershak and David Marquette.
That's the one.
So is the authors. Yep. So found that. We'll put that in the notes. All right, Andrei. Great to have you on the show. Is there a way that people can get in touch with you in case they have questions and they want to reach out?
Yeah, sure. I mean, my website is Orator Voice, so they can find my email there if they've got any questions about that. So yeah, oratorvoice.com.
Okay, great. If our listeners want to reach out to the show, they can find me on Twitter. I am at .NET Superhero. Thanks, everybody. Great show. We'll catch our listeners on the next episode of Adventures in .NET.